All right, guys. So Tom mentioned Hot Ones a little bit, but I want to bring up another Hot Ones clip, this time with Matt Damon. And this is about
Oh, I
DVDs and
like this
physical
one.
media and how the death of DVDs has really affected Hollywood. And this is something that's like super interesting to me because we're all big fans of physical media here on Salty Saturdays. And the fact that physical media is being slowly phased out of Hollywood is kind of worrisome.
And my
I want
shoes
to
don't fall down.
I want to show you guys this clip from the Hot Ones where basically Damon lays out what's going on with the DVD market.
The viewers can relate to is sitting on the couch on a Friday night, going through the streaming services, cycling through the movies, and thinking to themselves, they're not making movies for me anymore. As somebody who's been intimately involved in movie making for 30 years, what are the macro Hollywood conditions behind that sentiment?
Well, so what happened was the DVD was a huge part of our business, of our revenue stream. And technology has just made that obsolete. And so the movies that we used to make, you could afford to not make all of your money when it played in the theater because you knew you had the DVD coming behind the release. And 6 months later, you'd get a whole nother chunk. It would be like reopening the movie almost. And when that went away, that changed the type of movies that we could make. I did this movie Behind the Candelabra, and I talked to a studio executive who explained it was a $25 million movie. I would have to put that much into print and advertising, right, to market it, what we call P&A. So I'd have to put that in P&A. So now I'm in $50 million. I have to split everything I get with the exhibitor, right, the people who own the movie theaters. So I would have to make $100 million before I got into profit. And the idea of making $100 million on a story about like this love affair between these two people, yeah, I love everyone in the movie, but that's suddenly a massive gamble in a way that it wasn't in the 1990s when they were making all those kind of movies, the kind of movies that I loved and the kind of movies that were my bread and butter.
So guys, he basically breaks it down like this. Because DVDs are no longer a thing, there's less money on the back end to take risks on lower budget movies because movies cost a lot of money to market, and then they're not getting 100% of the revenue from theaters and all that stuff. So Tom Connors Jr., I know that this is a very passionate subject for you. What's your take on the death of DVDs?
Well, I really, it's a shot to my heart to hear you say that there is a death to DVDs because I even wonder what's bringing that on because the only death I see is the retail market not carrying them. But there's actually been a bit of a slight uptick in sales because in the last year or so, people have realized that, guess what? You don't own anything that's on streaming. And the thing that people run into most of all and they hate is when they're like, oh, you know what? I want to watch this movie. I haven't seen, Gemini Man in a few years. So they'll jump on, and I just looked over and grabbed a title. That's why I said that. They'll go and try and find it on Netflix. It's not there. They go try and find it on Amazon. It's there, but they have to buy it. They run into this issue. So they're like, you know what? It'd be so much easier if I just had the movie on my shelf. And the other part of what Matt's talking about is a movie like Rounders. I'll use one of his movies as a great example. Have you all heard of this movie? It's a brilliant fucking film.
Great movie. Love
Matt
it.
Damon, not Willem Dafoe, but John Malkovich. I don't know why I said Willem Dafoe. And of course, what's his face? His name is right here, and I can't even. Edward Norton. I don't know why I couldn't even remember.
You having a stroke, Tom?
I say,
I'm having a small
mini
stroke, but anyway, yes, I am. I'm having a mini stroke at the moment. So this movie came out back in 1998. It cost just over $12 million to make, and it only managed to make about $12 million at the box, or $22 million at the box office. But it was not a flop. Why? Because the DVD and video sales, as Damon was talking about, paid for the movie after the fact. It almost broke even at the theaters and then made plenty of money on video streaming, or not streaming then, it would have been video on demand, HBO, wherever else it went after that, and then eventually television. And by the end of the day, Matt Damon probably got a nice few residual checks off this movie when it was all said and done. Now you can't make a movie like Rounders anymore, right? You can't do that and market it. That's what he's talking about. So what the studios are doing, and this also goes back to the Vince Vaughn thing I was talking about too, is they're relying too much on IPs, right? Comic book movies, Harry Potters, you name it, Twilights, whatever. Something that's a known IP that's been in existence and known for a while instead of trying to create new IP. Because again, I always ask people, well, Tell me the last new IP we've had. The closest that anybody can come up with is usually John Wick, and that's already over a decade old. So that's the problem they're having. So like on that behalf, that's what he's talking about. And yeah, it is a big problem, and they need to embrace that. And really, I don't know why the mid-level movie went away, and I'm sure Odin has a lot to say about it too. But yeah, it's a sad state of affairs, and the market has really just been basically dwarfed because Walmart's aren't carrying them really anymore. Best Buy's quit carrying them. Target's quit carrying them. Barnes and Nobles is one of the few places you can get discs now. Otherwise, I tell people check out, your Goodwills, your pawn shops, your resale shops. That's a good place to get started if you want to start a new collection. Make a list of your top favorite films and try to build from there. That's what I tell people to do. But yeah, otherwise at this moment in time, I can't believe Hollywood is really not embracing it more, although most of the major studios still do, right? Like Disney kind of admitted they have to get behind it again by not saying, oh, we're going to get behind it, but what they did is they turned over all of their distribution to Sony. So that was their way of upticking output, but not admitting defeat by when they had pulled back on Blu-ray and DVD, which Odin, I'm sure, can get into that. If he wants to.
And I want to throw this to Odin because Odin, like Tom mentioned, studios have kind of reeled back from physical media. We don't have blockbusters anymore. We don't have movie rental stores anymore. It's hard to find DVDs in the big box retailers. And, some people will argue it's like, oh, well, the rental market just shifted to streaming because you can go on Amazon and rent a movie on there instead. The only difference is you don't actually own these movies anymore, even if you buy them digitally on Amazon.
I bought movies that were removed and I just lost access to them.
Yeah. So Odin, what's your take on basically Matt Damon saying that the reason that we're not getting any type of experimentation or small budget or mid-budget movies anymore is because we no longer have this additional distribution network?
I think there's a lot to it because it's not making these specific movies you're mentioning are not making money at the box office. This is something that I've really noticed, and anyone who follows my charting that I do always some of them actually do notice this, and those that do are actually more insightful than they even realize. They say, but almost everything in your chart is in the red. Like, oh my gosh, every movie is somehow in the red. I'm like, yeah, that's the problem, because only the really big movies with, massive budgets are consistently making money. But same token, those same films that are making a lot of money are also making, or rather losing, a lot of money in many cases as well. And so it's a very tough time for the box office because COVID really did change the way that we go to the theater. It used to be that you would be more willing to go to a film that you had not heard about, that maybe you just saw one poster for, because one, you were more willing to do this. You were already in the routine of going to the theater every single week, but also just as important, if not more so, and all of us know about the impact that this has had over the last 4 years, especially, we don't have as much expendable income as we once did, especially prior to COVID. And so because of that, now for people who either wanted to get back into the movie-going routines have now been met with higher ticket prices than they were used to before they stopped going before COVID, higher popcorn prices, everything increasing in prices. Now the theaters are trying to make, trying to stay alive as well by having certain seats be more expensive. Some people just don't like the fact that now they have to reserve their seat. I think there's a benefit to it, but I could see why people would say, I'd rather buy my ticket, get whatever seat I want, show up early, and get the prime seat. Now you have to actually pay if you want to sit in a certain area in some of these locations. So I just think that there's a fight. There's a battle going on, both in the actual movie-going industry and then also in the physical media sales, because this is, I think, a battle that is hopefully going to be lost by the studios, because they are now trying to get back, as was just mentioned, into the physical media game. And that means that they are trying to really, unfortunately, completely price gouge collectors, because you have, especially I think it's Disney is right now really doing it. They're spending they're charging $60, I think,
yes,
for some of these 4K steelbooks.
Yes,
which is insane. Anyone who's been following the space knows for a long time that a typical 4K steelbook was typically for the last several years in $30 to $40 range, right? When it first came out. and then they would be discounted,
Yeah.
early out or not too long for their release. And so when Disney's doing that for their mainstream movies, that's a big problem. Like, it's one thing where, because I was holding this up earlier, you have some companies that are actually starting to do things a little bit differently. So Lionsgate has their Lionsgate Select series. So this is the Conversation box set, which is
Lionsgate
brilliant.
Direct or whatever it's called.
Yeah, but it's also more expensive. But the difference is that you can't just buy it on Amazon. You have to go to their site directly. There's only a certain number, so it actually is limited. Whereas Disney, as this massive corporation, is taking films that they plan on selling a lot of copies for, plan on making a lot of copies for, but they're charging you up the wazoo for it. And so hopefully that they lose that battle, and fans and collectors can actually win. And that's why I've been holding off on buying some films that I actually genuinely want to get, but I refuse to pay that kind of premium for a lot of it.
Well, I'm of two minds on that, because I just want to say, like, the thing is with the problem with their price gouging is I just hope the rest of the industry doesn't follow in suit.
Yes.
Right? Because we already have Shout Factory and a few other companies that do price gouge, in my opinion. And the problem with that is that the other side of that is honestly, with inflation and the way things are, the price probably would probably be about $60 for a normal Blu-ray 4K right now if we were going with actual inflation. But since they fell off over the years, the price never raised, so they never grew with inflation. So we're actually kind of fortunate. But that being said, you're 100% right on everything you're saying. Is they're starting to slowly realize, oh crap, we dumped this entire revenue stream, and it was a very lucrative revenue stream at one time, and they misinterpreted the way the world worked when it came to because real quick, the reason DVD was so impactful, and people don't realize this, is that DVD came on the scene right after 9/11 came out or happened. This is when a lot of DVD movies started coming out, and people were staying home instead of going on vacation. So it was very similar to COVID in that respect. So instead of going to movies and going out and doing things in public and to ball games and stuff, they stayed home. They bought a home theater system and bought a bunch of DVDs. So the theaters fell off a bit, but the studios noticed a big revenue jump in DVDs. So they've been trying to replace DVD ever since. That's what they tried to do with Blu-ray, and they fucked it up. That's what they tried to do with 4K UHD, and they ain't been able to really make it stick because people don't understand. They have not done a good job of educating the public. When I have plenty of people ask me, oh, I don't want to get a new DVD or Blu-ray player because it won't play my old DVDs. Yeah. They are serious, right? Like, that is a problem when you have an uneducated general public when it comes to this stuff. And then, like he said, the price gouging and everything else that goes into it, it's a huge mess. So they thought during COVID they could pull the same thing after they did after 9/11 and get people into streaming. It didn't effing work. Why? Because people are not going to sit there and have 10 different streaming services. And Andre was right about this. It was the world's biggest, dumbest format war, because you had every single studio going, instead of going, you know what, we should use Netflix as a central hub and benefit from that. No. They decided we're all going to have our own. And that was basically like everybody going, we're going to have beta, we're going to have VHS, we're going to have this, Umatic, we're going to have all different formats for every studio. Can you imagine what that had been like back in the day? That's exactly what happened to us. Mm-hmm. And then they're wondering why we didn't adapt to that. I'm sorry, I just had to rage a bit.
Yeah, I want to throw this to Pro. Studios, especially Disney, seem to be reeling from this, lack of revenue stream. Do you think that there's any road where studios could, reclaim this revenue stream or find a way to replace it?
Well, that's hard to do. When you eviscerate your market, it's really hard to get people to go back. So here's what happened. They had this secondary market where after the release at the box office, then they had not only the DVD/VHS/Blu-ray, but then 6 months later they'd put out the special edition, right? Mm-hmm. Or the collector's edition or whatever. And so you had these multiple opportunities to relaunch the item and make more money off of it. And when streaming came along, they threw everything they had at streaming. And I think in large part because they also thought that movie theaters were going to go under. And I think there was some effort to either make movie theaters go under or to take control of them in such a way that they would essentially become places to host blockbusters. And then two things happened as a result of this. Because they threw everything at streaming, they sacrificed all of those redundant revenue streams, right? So your secondary releases, which, by the way, to give you some idea of how important this was, the Austin Powers original movie, Man of Mystery, right? International Man of Mystery. Mike Myers would have not had a hit. It didn't win at the box office. Austin Powers took off as a VHS DVD. That's, and then that resulted in having a trilogy at the box office. And then when the second one came out, The Spy Who Shagged Me, of course, it did phenomenally well for a comedy at the box office because it had had an opportunity in that secondary revenue stream, which was the VHS DVD. Okay, so they sacrificed all of that redundancy money, and simultaneous, they put all their eggs in the basket of a system where it's passive revenue. So like you can't really say, oh, well, I have this number of subscribers and it's because of this movie. There's no direct correlation. And then finally, this was all supposed to still work though, because superhero films and big IP films like Tom was referencing, they're supposed to subsidize it. So even though your lower level movies can basically no longer work anymore, right? It can all be subsidized. And it can be subsidized by the big movies like the MCU films and the DC films and the Harry Potter films, etc. And the problem there is what they did is they sacrificed those too, but those were sacrificed ideologically because they had to wokeify them. And so they've collapsed both sides of this. And I would say there's a third leg too that was collapsed as, this is true. I mean, it's a full reckoning in Hollywood. The third leg of the table that was collapsed was the power of the movie star, right? The celebrity economy. Because
Which
as
we talked
they
about
did
earlier,
these
yeah.
things,
Mm-hmm.
it and social media, it brought the celebrities closer to the consumer. But that wasn't necessarily good because it turns out that some of the celebrities are not the kind of people that you would want to have closer to you. And it turns out that the idea of a movie star, the reason we call them movie stars is because stars are far away and you look at them, right? From a great distance. You bring them close to you and all the magic is gone. And that's what's happened on all three prongs.
Dude, you're reminding me of a film I really like. I don't know if anyone else, The Majestic, which is like one of my favorite films, like more modern films. And in it, you have this character where he's talking about his love of movies, and he says, "Up there, that was Olympus. They were gods to us. And what did they do? They came down to us just for an hour or two to have a moment with us," right? And that's what it used to be, right? They used to be viewed in that way. But yeah, you're right. Social media made it so that it's like, oh, they're just like us. And in fact, some of them are just really, really bad people.
Right.
I wanted
This is we all know this would have been true no matter what the era, right? You don't need Maureen O'Hara telling you her quick takes on or her hot takes on politics. You don't need John Wayne posting a picture of what he had for breakfast. Like it's disillusioning of what we once had.
I don't
I
even know
wanna
that
throw
Buster
this-
Keaton is a animal rights activist.
Yeah,
Not that he
I
was.
want to throw this to Alex because Alex, it used to be that movie would come out in the theaters 6 months later, it would come out on home video, DVD. There was like this whole like long process that movies would go through to kind of cycle through the different avenues of distribution. Nowadays, 3 weeks after movies in theaters, it's available on streaming. So the turnaround time is like, super short. There's no more anticipation. People can say, well, I'm not going to go see it in theaters. I'm just going to wait for it to come out in streaming in a few weeks, especially like movies that bomb in theaters. But ironically enough, this strategy has negatively affected box office receipts. So do you think that that streaming has just been so disruptive for the industry that nobody really stopped to use one of the lines from Jurassic Park? You were so obsessed with that whether or not you could do it, you didn't think of whether or not you should do it.
Yeah. I think technology is always going to push things forward, and you can't go backwards after that. So now that streaming is out, like it's going to be. I don't think that the physical media thing is going to have. It's going to become like people who collect vinyl records. It'll still be there. It'll be an industry, but it'll be a niche industry. I mean, like if there's some, Sonic 3 comes out, right? My kids all want to see it. They love it. I like the other two movies. If I can't make it to the theater and spend, $15 per ticket, give or take. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got 5 people in my family all going to the theaters for $15 a pop, or I can wait until it shows up on Amazon Prime and rent it for $10. What are you
Or
gonna
you can travel the 7 seas, bro. That works. too.
do? What are you gonna do?
With a Plex server.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the problem, right? Like
Or get a Cinemark pass, bro.
Yeah, a movie like
AMC
Nosferatu could have made $200-300 million at the box office, but instead people are like, oh, I know it's going to be on streaming in a few weeks. And in fact, that movie did go to streaming in like 20-some days, less than the 36-day window.
It's already
that's
available.
A problem. Yeah, and that's a problem. I mean, and they already put themselves in this position by when they brought discs into the market, they never had a rental period for them, right? So what you guys were talking
It was
about
very
before
brief, very brief.
yeah, well, no, what they didn't even rental price DVDs. They were direct to market, right? And that was the thing is they never, and that kind of was a difference for people, and that's one of the reasons why Austin Powers was so popular. You had a lot of these really what we considered first run movies, 6 months after they were in theaters. You could go to a Walmart and buy it right there.
Well, Tom, I want to get Brian's take on this because we talked about the Plex server earlier in the show, and there are still collectors out there who want physical media, and there's a market for it, but it's an ever shrinking market. Brian, what's your take on how collectors are going to be responding to this stuff? Are they all going to go pirating?
Probably. I just got these bad boys today. I got ID4 and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the 40th anniversary edition. I'm a physical media collector because, and this is how I was radicalized. I had bought every episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You guys know that show?
Mm-hmm.
Right? One of my favorite comedies. And I'm going back to watch the seasons on Amazon Prime. I bought every episode. And all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute. I feel like I'm missing an episode of Always Sunny. I remember some funny stuff happening in this season that I'm not recognizing. Go online, find out that they had decided to ban certain episodes of certain seasons that were considered hateful because of blackface or talking about gays or talking about trans. And if you've ever seen Always Sunny, dude, a third of that show is that.
In all fairness, I believe we can all, I don't know, safely say that Larry David is a hyper conservative who should be banned, right?
Yes, exactly. So I'm going back, and there's entire 3 or 4 episodes per season just missing. I paid for this it was like $4 an episode over a year, and I'm not getting a refund. It's just gone. When that happened, I contacted Amazon and asked them what was up. Where's the stuff I paid for? And they said, oh, we lost the license rights to that. But no, because they decided to unilaterally ban those episodes because they didn't want to take heat from the 2% of weirdos out there that are going to complain about a comedy show. They just took it from me against my will. That is when I actively went from I'll casually buy a Blu-ray disc to I'm buying anything on sale that I like. Anything when it goes on sale, when I see it in the store, if I like it, I'm going to pick it up. As long as it's in a format that's permanent. I might not even watch it. Most of my Blu-rays, my Steelbooks, and that Steelbooks is a better investment than Blu-rays, to be clear. But most of my Steelbooks are not even open. It's just in case. Dude, it's just in case. So when it comes to physical media, you should buy it. Buy physical media. But if you can't buy it, if you can't afford it, then download it. And there is 100% legal ways to do this. You don't have to use the 7 Cs. You don't have to boot up the Plex server and hit up Pirate Bay. You don't got to do that. You can get a service called Keep Streams. And when you see something you like, download it completely for free because it's your service, and then drop it on your Plex server for free. And then years from now, when that content is completely gone, you can still boot it up and watch it on your phone, on your TV, on your computer, whatever. But 100%, you should be keeping copies of the stuff you like because it will just be removed and you won't have anything to say about it because you don't actually own it. You own a license for it, a temporary license.
That's true of video games now, too.
Yeah,
with AI, they'll eventually be able to edit it, so they'll only let you see the version they want you to see.
100%.
And I didn't know this about Sony. I'm not surprised if they would do it on streaming because Disney owns the show now, but I can't believe they would do it to one you purchased.
When you purchased it, bro.
Wow.
Same with that. Remember that cartoon Final Space?
Yeah.
I bought every season of that, and it was just removed because they lost the rights to it.
See, that I've heard about. I've heard a few edits here and there, but usually when they do edits, it's generally only the streaming version and not the purchase version.
No, the purchase, my purchase version.
That is fucked up, dude.
Same with certain episodes of Practical Jokers. I bought every single episode of Practical Jokers. Certain episodes, like the one where Joe becomes a couch and people sit on him, for some odd reason, they just removed that episode. There's no explanation for it whatsoever, but I purchased it. Now it's gone.